The following is a special presentation of 710 ESPN Seattle and 710sports.com. Live from Lucky Strike in Bellevue, this is Seahawks Weekly, presented by Bud Light and also by Pop Chips. Each Thursday night, we take you inside the Seahawks like no one else can. Seahawks Weekly is on 710 ESPN Seattle and 710sports.com.
Welcome to Seahawks Weekly. We are live at Lucky Strike in Bellevue Square. It's brought to you by Bud Light and Pop Chips. Joined by Dave Wyman, Max Strong. Dave Krieg is going to be here momentarily. It's going to be a great show. KJ Wright, you'll hear from him at 7:30. At 8 o'clock, we'll have the rookie tight end, Luke Wilson. We can talk to him about his introduction, his baptism into the NFL, which is something I know that Dave Wyman and Max Strong might have a few welcome to the NFL moments that they can talk to us about. And we're here at Lucky Strike. I want to thank you all for coming out. Thank you for listening out there on 710 ESPN Seattle. I'm Danny O'Neill. And it's hard to think, just a week ago, the amount of uncertainty and excitement about Seattle's home debut, and I don't think we can really get started today without pausing to take a moment and look back at what that game was, what it felt like, and really just the significance of that moment in this Seahawks season that had so much expectation, and to be paid off with a victory like that and a performance by the crowd, by the defense, and a little bit of Marshawn Lynch as well. He had a little bit to do with this game. What were your impressions, Mac, of what you saw on Sunday night?
Well, I thought it was a total and complete domination. I thought from our crowd noise, I thought to the way that the defense played the entire game. I thought that the way that the offense came on in the second half and the way they kind of put that game away. I really felt like that was just a completely dominant game. And I love that the Seahawks fans were able to win that Guinness Book World Record for the world's loudest stadium. I mean, that was just fantastic. But it was just a great game. We saw so many things happen in that game, and I think we really exposed the San Francisco 49ers. I think we showed really our dominance, not just in the NFC West, but in the NFC period, in the entire National Football League. I think as the power rankings have shown.
Is there something about a game when you go out and kind of know you have the winning hand and you kind of lay it on the table? Is that a little bit what we saw? Because, look, that first half, there's a very good possibility that they're down. They had a punt blocked. They didn't complete a pass in the first quarter. Seattle didn't. They committed a turnover on downs on what was, a missed penalty and maybe a poor spot on the Russell Wilson sneak. And, Dave, they still come out of it. It's 5-0 at halftime. And there was a little part of me that, if I'm being honest, I wanted that to be the final score. I wanted it to be 5-0 or even 2-0 of like that would be the signature moment.
Well, it would seem that way because you have two defenses that are so dominant and that, that it should play out that way. But, I think I've had that feeling before with a defense. I was on a pretty good defense in 92, and that's the thing that I understand that was said in the locker room when they went in for the lightning delay was that they pretty much threw everything they have at us, and we stopped it. So, we know what they're going to do, and they felt very confident at that point, and it really looked that way. I mean, San Francisco looked like a bad team. They looked terrible. Kaepernick did not look the same, and I think a lot of people chalk that up. Well, San Francisco had a bad day. No, this defense makes people look bad, and so that's what I'm seeing right now. And right now they're only giving up 5.5 points a game, about 230 yards. They're number one in both those categories. And, they've got a game this week where it looks like they may even improve on those numbers. So it's pretty awesome to see right now. And, I mentioned the 92 defense. We didn't have an offense to go with it. This team has an offense to go with it that can get it done. So really exciting. And, they put it to the test early on. Now, it's early in the season, but to go in the game number 2 and beat who was the number 1 in the ESPN Power Rankings that badly, that's pretty impressive.
Now let's take a moment. We're going to get enough defense. Dave could sit here and talk about defense all day, but we have another Dave here. Dave Krieg, we're going to bring on up now. Thank you very much, Dave, and this is awesome to have Dave Krieg here.
Look at Dave. He looks better now than he did when he was playing.
Now,
Why weren't you in this good a shape when you were playing?
I think that might be a shot, Dave. I think one of the Daves just took another shot off the bow.
He's jealous.
He's jealous.
If I'd had somebody like Mac blocking for me, I'd have stayed like this kind of shape.
Now,
God.
Dave Krieg.
Oh my God!
Look at this guy's supposed to be a quarterback. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, see, the reason is
He's got to have his assistant.
we could see that they
Jessamine.
didn't have headsets back then when the quarterbacks like they do now with the headset in the helmet.
This
And
is
there's
for
a little
Wyman's head.
This is for Wyman's head.
Jeez, look at it. It keeps falling off.
Yeah. Dave Krieg is here and experienced
Okay, I got
firsthand the roar of the 12th man when kind of that legend was born in the Kingdome. And how do you think that's carried over to the new stadium, to CenturyLink Field?
Oh, remarkably. I mean, the 12th man, as Pete Carroll talked about after the game, was huge because that helped us stay in the game. We had the punt block, and then we get the interception. And having the 12th man kept us in the football game because Russell didn't have a great game early in the first half. And our fans were just phenomenal. And I think that had an influence on Kaepernick's performance in the game as well as our defense did.
When you played in the Kingdome, what kind of impact would that have? And this is we'll go to all of you guys, but starting with Dave Krieg, what kind of impact do you see that have on the opponent?
Well, I think for Dave, probably doesn't mean as much, but for an offense, when we went to a different stadium, your communication and talking to the players, calling the play in the huddle even, doing the 2-minute drill. If you can't hear, it's hard to communicate and run the correct play, so Matt could attest to that on offense. And for Dave, I'm sure he appreciates having a crowd behind him on defense. So the crowd is a huge factor. The CenturyLink Field being an outdoor stadium, by far, I think, is the loudest stadium in the NFL, and the 12-man fans. I got to see it firsthand being on the sideline now. It's awesome.
Now, Dave Wyman, when can you tell that the crowd is affecting the opposing offense? What are the things that tip you off to that?
Well, here's the thing. This is what I understand from Mac, who played in both the Kingdome and at CenturyLink. It's actually louder at CenturyLink, which I never thought was possible because the Kingdome had that concrete roof, where it would echo off of there. But
I beg to differ. I think Kingdome's a little bit louder. But anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just listen to these guys, And the thing is on defense, you couldn't really communicate. And, communication not nearly as important on defense. I mean, what did I have, Dave? I think I had a lucky and rock call. That's code for
That's
left
pretty
and
left
right.
and right. Yep, you can do that. Yep.
Fool people with that one. But
I'd use numbers and names, yes.
Yeah. But, I mean, you had to make certain calls, and you just couldn't do it. So you had to go to hand signals. And that's what I saw the other night, that definitely limited San Francisco on what they can do offensively. Because, look, you can only have so many hand signals, and it's so difficult for an offense to come in. It's hard enough to game plan and, game plan what you're going to run against a given defense. But then when you have to get hand signals down and, everything has to be communicated that way because you know this, Mac, you're standing right next to somebody. You can scream as loud as you possibly can. You can't hear anything.
Yeah, that was the thing that was that I think really stood out to me was just Kaepernick has got to give those signals. He's got to give the play in the huddle. And all those guys were huddled in there close. I mean, they were almost nose to nose. And you could tell that guys left out of huddle like, what in the world? I don't even know what the play is, whatever. I hope I get it right. It just makes it for a lot of indecision. And at this game, playing at this level, especially in a game like this past weekend when you're playing against one of the top defenses in the National Football League, one of the top teams, period, it makes it extremely difficult. If there's any type of indecision, if there's any sort of second guessing whatsoever, you're not confident totally in what you're doing, then it's hard to execute. And it's hard to believe. I remember before I even got into the league, the only thing I knew about Seattle is that I think they were actually given flags for the crowd because they're saying they were too loud or something like that. And actually now, they're applauding that. They're saying that the crowd, is obviously a part of the game and they can influence the game however they want to by as loud as they can be. And so just making it hard on the opposing team. So it's just cool to see how much has changed in the last 20, 25 years.
Everybody thinks it's great except for the couple in Point Reyes, Marin County, who wrote a letter saying it was unsportsmanlike. The 12th man was unsportsmanlike, juiced on noise, which is surely as big a performance advantage as any performance-enhancing drug, which I found it was kind of comical. And then I heard her, and she was serious. She wanted a petition to get the crowd to be quiet.
It used to be a rule, like Max said, it used to be a rule where the quarterback would step back, and if the crowd didn't quiet down, they would give that home team, a penalty. and now they've changed that. But for this game, second game of the season, to be a championship-style atmosphere, as loud as it was, I'd say the Kingdome was the loudest dome stadium, and CenturyLink Field is the loudest outdoor stadium. That's the way I'd like to clarify that, and it was a big factor in that game last Sunday night.
When you look at, we were talking about this, that letdown is the wrong word, and you can't use that, but there's not nearly as much excitement or anxiety built up into this Week 3 game. Now, Jacksonville's coming to town, and the thing I want to get in, because you guys, I was the reporter, and I would come in to the locker room, and I would go to these guys. So, Dave Krieg, do you think that you might be overlooking this team? I mean, they're terrible. They're winless. They've scored 11 points. 2 of those were on defense. Your backups might be able to beat them. How are you going to keep from overlooking the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Exactly. You can't answer. Yeah, of course we're overlooking them. We're not, we don't really care about them this week. We're going to care about the game next week. You don't say that. You have to take each opponent and make them just as important as the 49ers. But this is a trap game. It's a setup game because look what happened in Carolina. They should have already learned their lesson. You go to Carolina and just expect to win. You can't have that happen. With Jacksonville showing up here, they have the second worst rush defense. Our offense is getting a lot of penalties. So this is a game that we can correct some mistakes, but we cannot afford to overlook the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're a team that's hungry. They're out there trying to put their demonstration of what their performance is on film, have everybody else watch them. It's a hungry team. You never know what can happen. It's the NFL. I know we're favored by 17 to 20 points. I mean, that's ridiculous. This is the NFL. It's not going to happen like that. So I'm really weary of this team coming in here, leery of it. And I just hope the Seahawks don't overlook them. It is it's human nature to do that.
Yeah, Mac, you were part of the Seahawks team in 2005 that set a franchise record with 11 consecutive victories. And I think what was remarkable about that is the consistency you guys had. What was the key to that team's ability to sort of sustain that focus week after week?
Well, I think it was a lot like the team is today. I mean, we were just bent on improving each week. We wanted to play better this coming week than we did the previous week. And I think that's what made us special. And when you win, when you start winning, when you get on a roll, I mean, it has a snowball effect. You feel confident. Everybody feels good. I mean, everybody feels like they're invincible. And you just want to go out and you just want to play at your very, very best. And I felt like those were some of the best practices we ever had. Everybody was having fun. Everybody was loving it. Just like these guys. These guys are having fun. I mean, they were talking about the other day during that rain delay inside having a dancing contest. I mean, they had the radio blaring, people taking showers in the jacuzzi, mixing martinis. Just having a great time. But they were having fun just playing football. And that's what it really takes to – that's what real team chemistry is built upon. Is everybody having the love for the game, going out, putting their best foot forward every time they step on the field, and really competing at a very, very high level.
We had martinis in the locker room. We just had to hide them. It wasn't. Exactly. But I've never heard of that before. Guys taking showers. During that kind of a delay. I had such a hard time getting into my uniform. I wasn't taking it off.
So. Take it off, get back into it again, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I thought the thing that was so telling at that moment was that Pete Carroll, the more I get to, see how he coaches and listen to the things he says, the more impressed I become by him. He actually gives you actionable details of how to get something done. Always compete. That's just a saying, but they actually go out and keep score at practice. And they put a film tape together, and everybody watches that, of clips to see who won what battle during practice. And I thought his thing coming out of the locker room was that he had them go out and high-five the fans. And it got the fans back into it. It kind of got them back into it. And I thought that was really a key moment because with the way they came out of that locker room after that delay, which is a huge distraction, and the way that San Francisco came out was totally different. San Francisco just kind of drudged out there. They looked flat, and the Seahawks looked like they were energized. So I think Pete Carroll's done an amazing job with this team and how to get them to live by those standards of all those mantras that he has.
Well, I think Mac touched on it too. It's the camaraderie, it's the chemistry in the locker room, it's the leadership, and that's where Pete Carroll and the veteran leadership on this team is going to come into play for not overlooking this type of game. And you would think the 49ers would have experience at a delay because that happened to them in the Super Bowl. They've already had experience at a big-time game and had the lights go out on them, and here was the lightning. And, another example of maybe some inspiration is Ken Norton's dad's not around, and hopefully that'll give the defense and the whole team some inspiration to play for him. And Gus Bradley's coming back, so they want to show that they can win without him as well.
When you look at and see this team's ability to sort of persevere through that break. And they come out and high-five it, and Dave mentioned leadership. And I think they would be remiss if we didn't ask Dave Krieg, who was one of the founding fathers of Seahawks quarterbacks, a member of the Ring of Honor.
Founding fathers. Oh my gosh.
About...
Well, that makes you sound really old.
Like Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore.
It's
Something like that.
That's what the Ring of Honor
Not
is.
grandfather. He said just father.
Founding father. And I know that when Pete Carroll, when he named Russell Wilson the starter, one of the things he said was it just fits here. It's an underdog team. It's a team. Dave Krieg came here from Milton College and was able to establish himself, become a Pro Bowler, take the Seahawks to where they hadn't been before. And with Russell Wilson now in the leadership, what do you see in Russell Wilson when you watch him play?
Oh, I see a lot of poise, maturity. I saw him last year after the Cardinals game, the first game of the season, and there was a lot of pressure on him. I mean, Pete put him right out there right away. I even talked to Pete before the season started. I said, maybe you should play, the Matt Flynn or somebody with experience and then bring Russell in, because you could tell Russell was going to be the quarterback eventually, and to thrust him into that role right off the bat. But he proved that he could make the transition going from North Carolina State to Wisconsin, which is where I'm from. Maybe there's something to do with that. And it's not Stanford, but it's close, same colors. And Russell Wilson, though, had the maturity and the poise, maybe playing baseball, too. He's hanging around with older guys in the Class A, Double A, and he was used to being around more mature people, and he brought that leadership to the team, and eventually they followed him and started to gain more trust in Russell, and he's just mature beyond years. He's got the poise under pressure, as Chuck Knox used to say, and he's just going to get better as his career progresses.
I was going to say one similarity between Russell Wilson and Dave Krieg, competitive. And Dave, I don't think I know anybody more competitive than Dave Krieg. I remember going over to his house one time, and he had pushed his little children off the little basketball court and was shooting on a little 3-foot-high rim, those little Nerf ball
baskets. I wanted to make 10 in a row, right?
No, you were trying to make like 20 in a row.
Right, I'm sorry.
And his wife was rebounding
for
him, and the kids were like sitting there like, can I please get a shot at this, Dad? I mean, everything Dave Krieg did, he was going to compete, and that's what I see out of Russell Wilson. He seems to be that same type of guy where, no matter what you do, he's going to try to win.
Well, they say most quarterbacks today always say this is the most competitive guy. You go to Jim Kelly, Dan Marino, John Elway. Quarterbacks have to be competitive, just by nature, but Russell shows that competitiveness, but he doesn't have that Richard Sherman thing like we were talking about before, where he's very boisterous and he's always talking about himself. He just goes out and does the job. And even Kaepernick is the kind of guy that you only played 10 games and you're on these magazines and everything. Russell Wilson at least earned it. He played the whole season last year, and I give a lot of credit to Russell, and he doesn't get a big head about everything. He's just very confident in his abilities, and that shows through to the rest of his teammates. I won't be surprised if he's not the captain next year and the years to come on.
When you look at what he's been able to do, and we're going to see teams start to game plan for him. I think we saw that in San Francisco. We certainly saw that in Carolina. And this week he's got Gus Bradley, a guy that's going to know him as well, perhaps better, than any coach he's going to go against. Gus will have seen every one of his practices from a year ago. How much of a factor is that? And we'll start with you, Mac. When you have a coach that knows the personnel that he's going to be going against, is there, you playing for Mike Holmgren, there's a number of guys throughout the league that had background with him. Does that influence at all the way a team prepares, given who they know that's going to be coaching against them?
No, I don't think so. Look, Pete Carroll's been talking about, and every player that's ever come on this show and done an interview, they've all said the same thing. It's not about what the other team does, it's how we play. And I really believe they believe that. They're going to prepare the same way. They're going to go into this game with the same philosophy that they've had ever since Pete got here. We're going to run the football, we're going to play stingy defense, and we're not going to turn the ball over, and we're going to win with that. Now, you run into, you're going to run into a few wrinkles because Gus does know them, but the thing about Gus and the Jacksonville Jaguars, I love Gus to death, and he's got an uphill battle down there trying to turn that roster around. Not a lot unlike what Pete walked into here when he first got here, but he just doesn't have the personnel. He doesn't have the personnel to be able to pull off like stopping Russell and Marshawn. This is a two-headed monster. When you think about this offense, they're not just a running offense. They're not just a throw. They're very balanced. They haven't been as balanced as I'd like them to be so far 2 games into the season. They're going to get there eventually, but they just have too many weapons. They got too many weapons, too much talent on this team offensively, I think, for Gus to be able to make an impact.
We're here at Seahawks Weekly. It's presented by Bud Light. Thank you very much to Bud Light. Seahawks Weekly is also brought to you by Pop Chips and Lucky Strike here in Bellevue Square. Dave Krieg's with us. We've got KJ Wright that's going to be calling in here in about 15 minutes. Luke Wilson, the rookie tight end, he's going to be here in person at 8 o'clock at Seahawks Weekly. And Dave Krieg, when you look out at this team and you see, is when you have a team, you guys return so many players from the 83 team that went down to Miami and won in the playoffs and came back, and then you suffered a difficult injury on the team. Kurt Warner hurts himself at the beginning of the next season. But that was a year you started with Super Bowl expectations, I'm sure.
Well, actually, what happened was 83, we had Kurt. It was Rookie of the Year or AFC Rookie of the Year. And then in 84, we lost Kurt in the very first game of the season. So Chuck Knox, to his credit, he brought in Franco Harris and some other running backs just to show the team, look, just because we lost Kurt, it's the next man up philosophy. So he brought in some other guys, and he also decided we're not going to just be ground Chuck. We're going to air it out. So he used 4 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers. That's the most we ever threw the football that year. And I was right behind Dan Marino if he didn't have that phenomenal season. But we went 12-4 without Kurt. So the next year in 85 is when we had the Super Bowl expectations. And that's where we won 2 games and lost 2 games. And that's where I was kind of afraid of the fact with the Seahawks this year is all these Super Bowl expectations are hyped on them, and that's a hard thing to deal with. You can start believing in your press clippings instead of the amount of work that you did to earn those press clippings. So we were able to adjust to losing Kurt Warner, and the Seahawks are adjusting right now to playing ugly against Carolina, beating a good team in San Francisco. Now let's see how mature they are in winning a game they're supposed to win, that they're heavily favored. And if they can not be caught in that trap game where we're just going to go throw our helmets out there and win the game.
Would you ever find yourself getting caught in a trap game, Dave Wyman? Because when I've talked to you, I think that this is one of my favorite. That hearing from you, you understand, and you would talk yourself into being scared by the time you started looking at tape.
Yeah, well, I just don't believe in that. We've talked about it a lot on on our show about how players are a little bit different now. I mean, as far as the media thing goes, I mean, I don't think we tried to avoid the media, and it wasn't as pervasive as it is now. Right. I mean, with Twitter and everything, you just can't help but notice what people are saying. But for the most part, nobody paid attention to it. So, like today, we talked to Sidney Rice, and I asked him a question at the end of the interview. I said, Sidney, who do you guys play the week after Jacksonville? And he just sat there. And I said, okay, that's all I needed to know.
Good,
he doesn't know. He really doesn't know. And I remember it being that way as a player. And, the other thing is the statistics, like, as far as how much they've run the ball or, what are their offensive numbers. You almost don't even really look at that either. You're just looking at film and formations and personnel groupings. And, once you get into the week and you start looking, even a team like Jacksonville, you can make a case that they could possibly beat you by looking at film. I mean, I think as a player, there's a little bit of paranoia, and also you just sort of realize that everybody in the league can make plays, and any team can really beat any team. This is possible, folks. I mean, I'm sorry. Yes. Jacksonville can beat this team this week. They're not that bad. People talking about their backups going in there and beating Jacksonville, there's no way.
No.
So, I mean, you have to be prepared and play at your best level. And, Mac, you said it best. It's about what you do, not what the other team does.
Well, 70% of this game is played going right between your ears. I mean, if you believe in yourself, if you have confidence, if you go out there and play that way, you can play at a high level. I mean, it's not just about all talent, how high you jump, how fast you are. I mean, all that stuff helps. But if you really believe in yourself, yeah, these guys, they're going to be looking at films. They're going to be looking at Rudy. They're going to be looking at all kind of films of underdogs that came back and won big games and that, that nobody gave them a chance. I guarantee you, Gus Bradley will have these guys jacked up. He's going to have them believing they're going to come in here and it's going to be a dogfight. I guarantee you. I knew that whenever we were playing a team that we were supposed to beat, and you were a 2-touchdown, double-digit favorite in the game, you just knew that was going to happen. They were going to come out, hit you in the mouth, and they were going to try and outlast you for that. They were going to give you smoke and mirrors, but they were going to be physical. And because that's all they can. That's all they can do. They're not going to go out. They're grown men. They have a lot of pride. They're not going to just go out there and quit. They're going to come out there and they're going to compete at a very high level. And you're going to have to stay in the game. You're going to have to match that intensity. And it may be later in the game before you overwhelm them and eventually sort of get things going. But it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be hard. Like that first quarter, I think it's going to be hard for them to get things going because that team's going to come up here. Gus is going to have them, definitely prepared and ready and playing at an emotionally high level at least.
it's one thing to find success in the NFL. It's another thing to sustain it. And what Mac's talking about is absolutely, we're going to find out how Seattle deals with kind of being the hunted a little bit. They're going to be on top. They're going to get everybody's best shot and how they handle it. It's Seahawks Weekly. I want to thank you, Dave. It was really nice to meet you today, and I appreciate you coming by.
Thanks, Danny. It's
and,
my
and
pleasure.
being here. This is fantastic. So let's hear it for Dave Krieg.
Thank you.
Member of the Ring of Honor. And when we come back, 710 ESPN Seattle, we're going to have KJ Wright on the phone, Seahawks linebacker. It's Seahawks Weekly, brought to you by Bud Light and Pop Chips here at Lucky Strike in Bellevue Square.